And good morning, Hoosier Nation, and welcome to another victorious edition of Hoosier Morning After. This is Hoosier Morning After Michigan State. Yesterday afternoon, your Indiana Hoosiers go on to defeat Michigan State 65-64 in the closest win IU has had this season. Nail biter down to the end, a 4-game win streak to finish off this wild situation and this wild season that is the 2023-2024 season for IU. 18-13. They finished the regular season 10-10 in the Big Ten Conference. And after a lot of the other games that finished yesterday, we can now say that IU will be in 6th place spot for the Big Ten tournament, facing the winner of Michigan and Penn State. And then having the interesting climb of also having to beat the number 3, the number 2, and then facing possibly the number 1 team to win the Big Ten tournament. Obviously, a little stained, and we'll get into that when we talk towards the end. IU fans and Hoosier Nation, we don't like the Big Ten tournament all that much, but we need a little bit more this time. But anyways, last night, what a great start to the game. Just hitting 4 threes, finding great ball movement, just great offense overall for IU. Again, another one of those situations where we're just kind of scratching our heads saying, where the hell has this been all year? And equally so, I will say the defensive end was very good. Guys rotating very well, forcing really tough shots from Michigan State, just really putting them on their heels, really struggling. It sounded like a very good assembly hall, cheering everyone on. And I will say as well, great defense in that starting moments from Gabe Cupps as well. Then Trey went out, didn't fall, didn't have an injury. Seemed like it was something obviously that's been nagging him in the situation. And that's where we kind of lost it. And IU lost its way a little bit. And Michigan was able to go on a little bit of a run after that, after we lost Trey, to kind of close the gap on the back of Tyson Walker having quite a stud of a game for him, getting downhill, making it very interesting for IU. But at least down the stretch, IU was able to lock it in and counter that punch that took IU almost out of this game and was down as much as 7 to close it out and do what they needed to do to get things and get the win in the end. Thank you for being here with us. I'm your host, Chad Schwartzkopf. Here with me always is Martha, the mop lady. We're also going to be joined at some point. He's going to pop in. He's dealing with his kids this morning, but Scott from Crimson Cast will also be a guest on the show. So excited to see Scott jump in. But Martha, your thoughts on the final game of the season?
It's, watching the game, right? Not knowing what to expect. And when you think about the 2 weeks that have led up to this game with what's going on kind of behind the scenes and the frustration of the fan base, the 3 wins. Certainly the team's playing better, right? They seem to have, they're playing with a little bit more pride than we've seen. Obviously X coming back helps, but I think, a lot of odd emotions going into this one on, it's senior day, right? What at the beginning of the game, we're not, we learned that, I think the 2 surprises that were walking in Trey and Anthony Leal, it's like, man, what's going to happen there? That's odd. And I didn't really expect that to happen, or, I thought it might, but wasn't sure. So there was that. And then obviously final home game of the year, there were rumors of boo, all the storylines, right? But for IU to come out like they did, and I think they amassed a 20 to 5 lead. I think Mbako hit that 3, and I think that was the largest lead. And then, right when that happened, it's like, okay, well, Trey's heading to the locker room, and he's got the hurt knee. Can we maintain? I bet we can't, was what was going through my head, and it kind of looked that way for a while, right? Because Michigan State was chipping and clawing back, and of course our offense, it goes cold. It looked like the version that we have criticized all season there for a while. Xavier Johnson seemed a bit reduced in his value, throwing the ball all over the place. There's good X, there's bad X, and we seem to be getting bad X for a while. But you've got to give it to the squad, right? Khalil Ware was a man amongst boys yesterday, and he looked like a lottery pick to me. So found a way, and I think that's kind of been the storyline here down the stretch, is that is it frustrating that we're in this position to where we have to end the season on this 4-game win streak to get some solace out of what has been a really frustrating year? Yeah, that part kind of upsets me. It challenges me. It's like, why does this have to be my takeaway? Is that, they played well down the stretch. So, but you've got to be proud that they found a way. Khalil Ware was it felt like he kind of put his team on the back. So yeah. And then obviously the end of the game, the senior day stuff was a bit perplexing. I'm sure we'll get into that. But yeah, interesting day. Glad we found a way. And now we put ourselves in a position that, when you think about it 3-4 games ago as the 6th seed in the league, I think anybody really saw that. So again, you've got to give credit to the players, the staff for never quitting. And now let's see what happens in the Big Ten tournament, which, has never been our friend, but we'll see.
Yeah. And speaking with that placement, finishing 6th, obviously that I think was what some of the predictions had us going into this season as being kind of finishing around that 6th point. And I think there's been times in this season that we have thought that would have been a big surprise for IU to be sitting at the 6th seed in the end of this season. But great to be able to climb to that point, and all those different things that need to happen at the end of the season just fell in a good place for IU to secure that position to finish off. And with that cue, here jumps in Scott, a fresh new face for the Hoosier Morning After podcast. Scott, thank you for joining us. We're just kind of doing our opening thoughts on yesterday's game. So what are your thoughts on the game yesterday?
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. I'm back from the bus stop. So first sun is off well and good. And just for those who are listening, I have we need to keep a timer for 11 minutes to make sure my second one gets off. And then I can really let my real thoughts go. No, it's great to be on. I got my coffee. I'm ready to rock and roll. Yeah, it's a weird, from a large point of view, I was thinking about this, that, we finished in the 6th seed in the Big Ten. You finish on a 4-game winning streak. And yet it still feels like, I said this many times, like once people kind of get mentally checked out, it's really tough to get checked back in. And it's an odd end of the year because unless something just absurd happens in the Big Ten tournament, next week will be our last couple of games for this season. And then it'll be a season where we don't make the NCAA tournament, of which just categorically, that's not a successful season at Indiana. But like this little stretch here at the end, they've been playing great. And it's going to be probably a little bit forgotten over time of how well they played in these last 4 games when you think back on the season. And I even think back kind of the reverse has happened 2 years ago, because as we've talked about Woodson over these last couple of weeks, the first 2 years we made the tournament, had a pretty good run. It's like, well, the first year, I distinctly remember being at Assembly Hall and watching Ron Harper Jr., metaphorically drop his cojones on the court as we had lost, 7 of 9. And as I'm walking out being like, wow, Rutgers owns us and we're not making the NCAA tournament. Now they turned that one around and that wasn't the case, but that feeling of that year, that's partially why I think, myself and others are kind of upset with everything right now, is that feeling was there that season, but that's kind of also washed away. So anyway, long way of saying, I think it's been a great little 4-game run. I think it's a really good win against a kind of a very odd Michigan State team. Watching them for a whole game is like, wow, these are 2 teams, and I'm not sure who wants this, but you won. It's good. I just worry that in the sands of time, it's going to be kind of washed away, and this will just be, unfortunately, kind of like a lost, forgotten, not great season.
Yeah, and I wanted, while we're kind of talking about the end of the season and that situation, obviously the Big Ten tournament happens and IU could get a bid into the NIT. We can debate that, whether IU decides to take that. Obviously, IU fandom has a stain to the NIT, but it might be a good situation for this team to play a few more games and just show out. It's up there in Indianapolis. So play close to home. Just get these guys another chance to warm up. The few guys that could be back or might be back. Continue this forward momentum for IU and everything. And then equally so, there's been discussion, obviously, about even in this game, measuring IU against Michigan State. And Michigan State is kind of projected, at least right now, depends on how the IU game affects that, to be around a 9 seed or so. Well, why isn't Indiana there? And that's just because of IU's start to the season. IU in the net didn't take care of those cupcake games that they have, they didn't win by enough. They didn't set the numbers in a good trending way to start the season. And then those bigger teams that they played against and lost against, they lost by too much. That's the basically simplest way to say it. Now, your guys' thoughts on, should IU take an NIT? Would IU play an NIT? Would that benefit? How would that affect kind of a fractured fan base of true fans and what the other fans are for IU? What are your thoughts on that, Martha?
Yeah, I think it's a perplexing one. I've got a little bit of a soft spot in my mind for the NIT, because that's where the Hoosier Ticket Project got its start, from that NIT run back in 16. So do I like the NIT? No, but it'll always have kind of a soft spot in my heart. But I think a lot of that depends on college basketball and how different it is now compared to the last time Indiana was on the NIT. You've got to look at, to me, the NIT is kind of a preparation for the following season, right? You're kind of, who's going to be back, right? When you look at Indiana's roster, I think there's a ton of questions on who's even going to be back. So is there any value in playing in the NIT, right? Because you're really trying to prepare yourself for next season, get guys some experience that you're going to ride with next season. And I don't even know if Indiana knows that. So outside of the two guys that mentioned it yesterday. So I think there's going to be a ton of roster attrition. So I think at the end of the day, if there's value there and you've got, guys are going to be back and you can get them experience, then do it. But other than that, I wouldn't be upset if they turned it down either, knowing that a lot of these guys are going to be moving on.
Yeah. Scott, NIT, yay or nay?
No, I think that's a great point, because, on the surface, I always think of I think it was Michigan in like the mid 2000s. So there's been teams that have taken the NIT, had a run in it, and then it kind of leads into the run next year. Although I think that's probably more just in my memory, and probably if I look through the stats, it probably doesn't happen as often as you would think. I think Martha makes a great point that, it's hard to have a lot of that translate in the next season if the whole offseason is going to be getting portal guys and getting new people. I mean, I think also younger people or older people, although we're turning into older people, but older people are not going to want to hear this. But I think part of it is you sit down with Khalil Ware. It's like, hey man, do you want to play in the NIT? Because he should be going to the pros if he isn't. And if he doesn't want to play in the NIT, which would also kind of make sense if he's like, hey man, I'm just ready to get ready for the NBA. Then it's like, there's really no reason to play. Because if he's not going to play, then, and I'm not, I've enjoyed watching Khalil Ware. I'm not knocking him at all, but if he's just makes a decision, I'd rather just shut it down and be prepared for the NBA, which is a very logical decision. Then there really is no point in Indiana playing, because without him, they wouldn't have a chance at it. And I don't think you should. It's weird thing of giving that much power to a kid, but in this situation, if he's gonna shut it down, and again, like as Martha said, if you're not going to have a lot of continuity, I'm not sure. It pains me because I'm always like, I always like, yes, play. It's good. More postseason, more basketball is better. So I always err on the side of I'd rather see them play. And, if you're not going to have any home games, maybe you do just, even with all of those things known, you just still roll it out and just see what you can do. I mean, I think you can still work on things. It's still a lab. It still gives you more practice time. So I always err on yes, but I definitely see there's a lot of reasons why it would kind of make sense to just say, look, we're going to shut it down and, really focus on next year.
Yeah, and I'm mixed in that standpoint that and maybe more towards the let's see how the Big Ten tournament goes. Then we'll kind of reassess that situation. But when you're hot, when things are going well and things are going hot, and we've got players that need that little bit extra time to develop, and you'd like to have them continue this hot streak. Going into next year, like Cups is doing a little bit better, and just to see him maybe evolve his offense a little bit more in the NIT when you don't care as much. But you make an interesting point with Ware as well, where it almost shifts the NIT to a conversation as you see in football with bowl games. When you get these college football teams that get the lesser known bowls, and you've got their star guys that are definitely headed to the NFL. Well, let's not play in this bowl game because I might injure myself. Things might happen. There's no reward here for this. It's not like it's the playoffs kind of situation. That's kind of the parallel, I guess, the NIT kind of has now to the tournament, in the sense that I agree that with Ware. If the situation is don't risk it. Don't risk an injury. or something that happened that's going to drop that draft stock at all. You don't want to affect that at all. So very interesting. Of course, I'm going to be a greedy IU fan and want to see him more. But I think that if they do play in that tournament, I will be willing to, and I hope a lot of IU fans will be as well, to step back and just see it as bonus. Not see it as we're trying to prove a point. We're trying to do big things. Just think of it as that off-season, a little off-season tournament that we were able to jump in and just kind of keep our feet wet and see a lot of different guys play in those situations. So one jumping into kind of talking. Oh, go ahead.
One side note about just the playing thing is always makes me laugh is, like guys will say, and totally get it. It's like, hey, I don't want to play, you think it's a lot more in the NBA, but it's like, I don't want to play in this because I don't want to get injured. And like, definitely in the off season, it's like, do I want to play in the Olympics? I don't want to get injured. It's like, do basketball players play basketball? Like if Khalil Ware doesn't play in the NIT, like he's going to be playing pickup basketball somewhere else. And it's so funny where you see guys like in the NBA, like, oh man, like, we can't, I don't want to play in the Olympics. I don't want to get injured. I want to take some time off. And he like nothing but, 12 straight days of Instagram video, them playing, 5-on-5 at LA Fitness. It's like basketball players play basketball. Anyway.
Yeah, they've got the itch, they've got the fever. They're gonna do what they do. Jumping in and just kind of talking a few about the players, and I think we need to start off obviously and talk about our seniors individually. It being senior night last night, I think Trey was amazing from the get go. Just getting started in this game, hitting that three, being the first 3 points of IU. Went into the game. Just two assists shy of the Big Ten season assist record, just behind Quinn Buckner. Sadly, he won't get that. We at least have one more year for him to try to get that as well. But when he went out, he was obviously greatly missed. And it's just interesting season for Trey as a growth standpoint. Obviously, when you look back at what we wanted from Trey and what we expected from Trey going into this season, we expected him to be more of the two guard. We saw X coming in. He was going to be our leader. He was going to be the point guard leading this team. And with X getting injured, he had to step up and be that point guard, be that distributor. And towards the end of the season has been amazing at that. I mean, the 2 12 assist games that he's had, and just showed when he was out in this game, the loss on both sides of the ball for Trey, but just love the season, what we've had from him so far. He's shouldered so much for IU, and we've seen those ups and downs. We've seen a great up at the end here with the solace of his teammate, his fellow friend Leo coming in and being that calming factor for him. But just love what Trey has given to us. Happy to have one more season. Such a great speech at the end for him to hype everyone up and announce that. But your kind of thoughts on Trey's game, Scott, and then just overall his impact and his evolution this year as a senior.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at his stats year over year, like 2023 isn't the aberration, but it's like 2021, 2022, and then 2024. You see a steady progression. Like this year, 2024, his numbers, in all kind of the major metrics were better than 22. The trouble is 2023, like his junior year, was such a high outlier that it looks like he has regressed from that. But if you just look at freshman, sophomore, senior, it's like he is on a very standard college growth curve, which just makes you wonder, like on, his junior year, was that just based on him just having a season-long heater? Was it because of Trace Jackson Davis and all of the attention that he drew kind of put him in an open spot? It still kind of yet to be seen. It did feel at times that, Trey was asked to shoulder more load than he was able to, and I think it affected his numbers. But I mean, he's one of the reasons, not to get all sappy here, but he's why, Indiana basketball fans become Indiana basketball fans. Obviously we have the success, the tradition, the great play, but it's seeing guys grow into roles, where Trey was as a freshman. I mean, I'm looking at his numbers. It's like there's not a lot there, and seeing him grow into what he's become, like that is why in the end, if you like college basketball, you like college basketball, is because the guys like Ware are awesome, but they kind of come and they're here and they're gone. It's seeing somebody in that 4, now 5-year growth curve, seeing the growth, kind of having that continuity year over year. So it's been fun to watch him play. I'm curious for next year to see how his role fits in, because I feel like this had to have been a frustrating year for Trey because he was being asked to do a lot. You obviously saw him struggle to do it, But the year before, he was asked to do very specific things, and he really succeeded at it. So it's like, can we find that right balance of using more Trey, but using him in the right way?
Yeah. Your thoughts on Trey as well, Martha?
I think Scott hit the nail on the head, and you and I have talked a lot about it. When we compared this season to last season and the version of Trey we've had and how good he was, I think about the North Carolina game back last year. And, it was just those moments where he came off the bench and was that spark plug and, hit a bunch of threes. And we're like, why doesn't this guy start? Well, now he starts, and it's like, why is this guy starting? And, so it's, you kind of back and forth with it a little bit. But, we're at that point in the season where you find these what if moments, like, we're ending the season on a 4-game win streak, and you think, well, what if we didn't drop home games to Penn State, Northwestern, and whatnot? Now you look at I look at the box score today, and you get past, and we're going to get into stats in a minute. I get that, but when you look past the starting 5, even with all the minutes the guys had to play and the lack of real offensive production, you're led to ask yourself, well, what if we had an actual stud perimeter player this season? What if, and that's kind of where I'm at with this group is you're just left with a what if. But I think when you start talking about Trey, he played 7 minutes yesterday, and he was our 4th leading scorer.
Yowza.
I don't know. I hate to laugh at that, but it's and I don't mean it as a joke, but it's just, it just shows you where it goes back to that what if, right? I mean, we have some studs at the you could say 3, whatever you want to call McKenzie, but 3, 4, 5, right? If you just pair those with some stud guards, and then you've got Trey coming off the bench, just think about where this program could be, right? So, but Trey's just been a guy that, I think leading up to yesterday, a lot of people wondered whether he's going to be back or not, right? He just seemed awfully frustrated. Some body language stuff, just, the rumor mills where this guy's, he's at his wit's end with kind of what he's asked to be doing and how the situation looks. But, you mentioned his speech, right? I think that was some icing on the cake for this year. I think a lot of people are excited he's back for all the reasons that Scott mentioned. Hopefully we find that position for him moving forward where he is, maybe coming off the bench, or he's not relied on so heavily to be doing so much for Indiana. So just a guy I've learned to appreciate, and I'm glad that we're going to have his leadership again next season. Yeah.
Hopefully he just continues these assist numbers that he's doing. He's at least, like you said, about the right things and sets the tone. And along with that, his fellow Indy Elite guy was also the other guy that we had playing with him, being that calming factor. Was his senior year as well, but he also announced he's coming back, and I'm really excited for that. I'm happy for that. I think in this game, he played kind of some of the most minutes he's played all this season, and obviously a lot of that was due to Trey being out. But he's just out there doing those off the stat sheet things, those hustle plays that you love from him and you see from him, and even more so, it's just the leadership that he brings to this team. I didn't write it in my notes the moment exactly, but in the second half, when I was getting a little turnover crazy, a few turnovers in a row during the next dead ball moment, and I've seen this a couple times, the cameras caught him just kind of telling the guys, all right, calm down, let's bring it in. He's really kind of that calming factor for IU and for the guys around him, and just puts himself in the right position. Interesting. We saw the right replay to see that it wasn't just a missed shot, but a great play by him getting downhill and kind of the little Malik-esque running hook, but was actually not a shot, was more of an alley-oop there to Ware, but smart on his point. I mean, he's got high basketball IQ to know that it's a lot better for me to give this ball to the big guy than for me to try to shoot this shot. Now, I would love to see moving forward with him and into the next year, him being more of that kind of Matt Roth kind of spot up shooter guy ready there to hit shots for IU, because he can. He's got a great clean shot. And I'd like to see IU run plays for him or him being able to do that, because he makes the right decision, be it in some sort of off rotation play, or just being the guy that feeds the ball and is there ready to receive from his guy stabbing in, like we've seen a lot, that Malik gets doubled and everything to be kicked out to and take that shot. I'd like to see him get some of those rhythm shots going because I think that will help him get to that next click level. Scott, your thoughts on Anthony Leal's game, just kind of overall and last night as well?
No, I mean, last night was good. It's going to be a confusing career because like one of two things is going to happen is either he's going to continue to play kind of intermittently in his fifth senior year, or if he comes back and has a really good fifth senior year. Like the question I've always had with Leo is like, I don't get why he doesn't play more. And I fully understand there are coaches who know more than three of us, and they're there every day and they see stuff in practice. But, like you said, he has a unbelievably clean shot. I think for whatever reason in college, he's been nervous to take it. It seems like he's very much in kind of pass first mode. I wish that would be taken out. And it's like, hey, man, you have green light, go. Like, don't be afraid. But I always thought it's like, well, it must just be on, and it was for a while, like on defense or just not making the right reads. But he came in that Ohio State game and played great defense at the end on the road. And he has made really good defensive plays the times he's been in there. And I'm just like, I don't see enough here to not see him playing more. And I've never fully understood it. And you look at his career, it's just a bunch of DNPs. Like it is just DNPs all over the board until, basically the Iowa game on January 30th. And then he's played every game since. This is the only stretch in his career. And it's the end of his fifth year. That's where I just look at it. And again, the guys on the bench, the backup quarterback are always the most popular player. I get it. But he comes in and he does things, not to pick on other, like, CJ Leal still CJ Gunn still mixing guys up. CJ Gunn still comes in and makes you see him make, defensive mistakes and kind of weird plays on offense. And like, it does feel like for the last 2 years when Leal has come in, he's been very solid. It feels like he's earned a lot more playing time than he's gotten. And it's very possible that maybe just all those mistakes were happening on the practice court and we were not seeing that. But from what we see on the game court and all we can see as fans, I'm happy he's getting more playing time. I hope it continues. And I hope that next year he becomes kind of a solid full-time contributor. And I do like that it seems like he has stepped into that leadership role because, we're going to need it next year with the amount of transition it seems like we're going to be having. Yeah.
And I think it might be that last tick of confidence that he needs just to know that he can take that shot and maybe run something for him to get him a shot early in the game just to test those waters and see what you're going to get. Because if it doesn't go in, then he can revert back to what he's doing right now for IU and just being those little off the stat sheet kind of situations. But at least see if you can get them hot and get that confidence tick in them. And maybe that will come next year. But I'm excited to see what it will be because, again, he is that fan favorite. He is that hometown kid. He's a fellow Bloomington South grad like I am. And he is doing this right thing. There you go. So it's just being that leadership, being that kid that's about the right things on the roster is the thing you love to see for IU and you love to have on IU. And once he's gone, I feel like Cups is that next man up for that type of situation and that kind of fan favorite as well. Next senior I want to move to talking about is Anthony Walker, obviously a 1-year guy jumping in for IU. Didn't get much time in this game, just 4 minutes. But what a great addition. In the end, kind of looking back at the beginning of the season, looked a little rough around the edges to start, but was just kind of that experienced guy in a roster that was pretty young, a starting lineup that was pretty young. Just having another guy to come in there and do the right things. I've loved throughout this season, he makes the right cuts to the basket, finds the open space. His basketball IQ has been great for IU when teams have gone into the zone at breaking down zone offenses, finding his own shot as well. He's been doing a great thing. So I like the addition to him. Obviously, IU's pretty thick down underneath. And so it's tough at the beginning to see why add a guy of this size or in this position to IU. But I think he's been a great addition to IU, being able to be a 4 that can go in there and maybe be a little bit more out than a lot of the other 4s on IU's roster. Your kind of thoughts on Walker's 1-year season with IU?
Yeah, so I've been saying this for a while, and this is not to get macro, like what concerns me for next year, but to me, Walker is like an A+ portal addition. and people might look at that and be like, what are you talking about? Like he averages, like he'll have like 4 points here, 10 points, like just doesn't, he's a little bit inconsistent. It's not like he blew the doors off, but you look at what he did in Miami, Florida, year over year over year. And you basically took him and he was averaging like, 25 and a half minutes his last year at Miami. We brought him up to 35, and a half, percentage minutes. Like he's averaging like 25% of available minutes. He's now getting about 35% of available minutes. So you tick his usage up and all of his numbers have effectively ticked up as well. So his offensive rating went from 93 to 106. His effective field goal percentage has gone up. His defensive rebounding rate has gone up. Oddly, he's shooting less threes, but shooting the exact same percentage at 12%. So not great, but is kind of what he's at. His 2-point shooting has gone up. Like to me, this is exactly what you hope to get out of the portal. Like these are solid singles you get out of the portal. The question is whether enough of these is going to get you to where you need to go as a, elite level program. Totally different discussion. But from a Anthony Walker position, to me, it's like this was a great player who did exactly what you wanted to do. Is like you took somebody who showed like I have a baseline of this at the college level, and I'm going to come in and get a little bit more, and I'm going to raise my baseline up. And you got exactly what I was expecting to get out of Walker, which is sometimes a little inconsistent, but really a guy who's let's say professional, like a professional college basketball player. Like give you what you need. Like, you're going to get exactly what so to me, it's like I was very happy with the Walker experience. I think from day one, when you started him play, it's like, oh, this guy knows what he's doing. This is a guy who's been around. Like this is a leader of the team.
Yeah. Yeah. And a guy that's won, a guy that's gone to different places, and a great business move by him as well. I'm sure he made a little bit more money than he was making down at Miami as well to kind of finish off his season. And great to have him. Fantastic. Great addition. Like I said, like you mentioned, it's those little things that you do in the portal. Obviously, IU's going to have to handle the portal very differently this offseason, but that's what you use the portal for. You have your core group and you just add in those little gaps that you see. IU needed the veteran. IU needed someone with experience winning and everything. And that's what he supplied for IU. Then the last senior to speak about, Xavier Johnson, the Razor's Edge man, the man that plays on that line, struggles for IU in and out, has had some horrible luck for injuries for IU, and has been the topic of many what ifs for IU going into this season. If he would have not been injured last season, but would Jalen Hood-Schifino had come around as much as he did, if he had not gotten injured, would Trey Galloway had developed as much as he did for us? So it's very interesting. And I think this game was kind of one of those games you can get from him, where he didn't score as much. You'd like to see, obviously, his offense come around a little bit, but you saw that tough and bad X where he got himself into the air, into situations that he shouldn't have gotten himself. So, which caused a few more turnovers than you would have liked to see out of him. Now, he did, I will say, clean that up in the second half a little bit more with 3 assists and only 1 turnover. And that made 3 his only points in the game on his weird little bow-legged in shot that X has for IU. But I think overall as a career has been a fantastic addition for IU, and I've loved that edge. While it gets frustrating on those flagrant calls that you see for him, it's at least been that fire that IU has missed in the past before X was on this team. So, Martha, your thoughts on his game, and then just X with IU.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, down the road a year or two, kind of as we move forward, kind of how his legacy unfolds a bit for IU and IU fans. When you think back about when he came to Indiana from Pitt, and there were the storylines that he couldn't stay on the court at Pitt, and Jason Capel and him. Jason Capel essentially pushed him out the door, right? And I think he had a big problem of getting technicals at Pitt, and we know now that he certainly plays. You mentioned Razor's Edge, right? He plays with a lot of emotion, and he's not afraid to show that, and it's put him in tough positions. I think he's come a long way from the Pitt version of himself, but he's kind of the unfortunate part about it, and I think a lot of IU fans will remember him this way, is that he's been pretty unreliable, and some of it's not his fault, right? I mean, obviously the injuries, right? He's had a ton of bad luck there, but just when we think we have X back, he gets hurt again, and we miss him for either the chunk of a season or the entire rest of the season. And part of the frustration, I think, on top of that is the way that known unreliability has kind of always been there for his career. Yet Mike Woodson was insistent on kind of building this year's roster around him being reliable. And I think that's really where I got a little bit frustrated, is like, X has never played an entire season, and yet we're going to move forward assuming he's going to. That's in an era where you can bring in players pretty easily with the resources that IU has. That's an interesting approach. And I think that's where I was frustrated. But when you think about X as a player, I think you've got to give him credit for when X was on, he kind of had a little bit of a Troy Williams kind of, at least from a fan standpoint of good X, bad X, right? It's like, or no, don't do that X. And then he does something and it ends up working out. You're like, all right, you can do that X, right? I mean, but there were times when he put IU on his back. I think about that first season that Scott mentioned when they made that run in the Big Ten tournament. That was the X and Trey show, and X was just unstoppable offensively, right? So when he was on, and there were a lot of times he was on, he was a stud for Indiana, and he carried us offensively. So yeah, I'll always kind of have a what if kind of mindset to him, is if we could have kept him on the court, man, there were some things that we could have done. But I'll always appreciate him. He chose to come back. It seems like he, in large part, got his head right, and wish him nothing but luck moving forward.
Yeah, Scott, your thoughts on X?
I'll break this news here. It's funny. I'm not big into social media. I follow Twitter. Like, I use Twitter to follow stuff. I rarely tweet from my account. I've never tweeted about players, and I say a lot of random stuff on the podcast.
You're truly Donovan. That's what you're here to reveal.
Yes, I'm truly Donovan. No. Xavier's the only player that and by the way, I don't even check enough to even know, but like, I'll see stuff and like see like links, and I'll click stuff. I got blocked by Xavier Johnson at some point like 2 years ago. And Crimson Cast is not blocked, but like my personal, which is Crimson Cast 317, which like, go back and look. I have like 7 tweets. Like, and I've always thought that I've been kind of kind to X on the pod. And I'm like, wow, I must have said something that pissed him off. That's interesting. Anyway,
to find you specifically, or maybe he was just looking for Crimson Cast period and found you and was like, I'll just get that one.
It got me instead. And like, I took shrapnel. So I'm here to settle some hash. No, I think I echo what everybody else says, that, it's like razor's edge, like riding a bull. Like, I remember that the first time I saw Xavier was in the St. John's game, his first year with us. So that was Woodson's first year, 2022. And I remember that game being like, ooh, this guy's got like we've all said, like, he's got some edge. And like, I forget, like, there was a little point guard for St. John's who was like pushing him around, and like, you saw Xavier come back and like just immediately like go back at him, to the point that he kind of wasn't running the offense. He was running the, like, I'm going to show this kid up. And it's, I think we all echo the same sentiments of like, he's been unreliable, not his fault. And it's been tough to kind of, get him focused in. But I think, I don't want to speak for him as someone who's been blocked by him on Twitter, but I do think for him as well, it's probably been tough to kind of re-engage back into basketball, and kind of for him to be able to ride that fine line between aggressiveness and going too far when you're kind of starting and stopping. And, I echo what Martha said, the end of that 2022 season, he, from the Ohio State game on in that season, looking at the stats, his, offensive efficiency was over 100 most of the games. He had a run in that tournament, and you think like, well, what was different in that year? It's like, well, he was playing that entire year. He was the starting point guard that entire year. And, my thought is that he probably figured out how to, with that team, kind of harness what's the energy I need to have, enough edge to give me the dog that I need in the game, but not so much that I'm going over the edge. And then ever since then, he's kind of getting it, and then he gets injured. I mean, the next year it's like, it looks like he's figured it out again, and then he's injured and he's out. And this year was just a complete, start and stop and start and stop. And I think that affects him as much as it affects us as fans. Who cares about the fans? Like, for him, it's like, I think it's hard for him to then kind of check back into, all right, here's the exact sweet spot of where I need to be. And I think he kind of oscillates between either not being aggressive, too aggressive with the flagrant fouls. And so it's always going to be kind of a career where you're like, man, it's too bad he was getting injured and not able to kind of harness that energy in the right way. Because when it was harnessed, and when he had that kind of right down the middle, it's exactly the kind of player you want. You need somebody on your team with some of that edge. And so, yeah, I mean, it's too bad because it's just you're going to look back on it, or I'm always going to think back on it as just kind of like a start and stop where things never fully were able to kind of get going and kind of get moving. I think of all players, he's one that kind of needs that positive forward momentum of things kind of continuing to move on and on and on off each other.
Yeah. If that second injury didn't happen for him this season, I think very different things for IU, and this upward tick that we're seeing, albeit late, may have started a little bit earlier. Because obviously you can point towards that. We started on this trajectory of up once we got X back in there. Be it obviously his numbers aren't huge in those situations, but just those little things that he adds to IU were so sorely missed when he was out this year. Renew, I think, finished a very interesting game last night for him. 16 points on 6 for 14, missed a 3. Again, I'm one that always will like him taking at least 1 3 in a game. 4 for 6 from the line. That's fantastic for him. He was good down the stretch for IU, but I felt like he struggled during at least the first part of the game. And he had one of those games where you see those moments where he kind of checks out and is just kind of ball watching in moments. It was the last play of Michigan in the first half where we got a great replay of it, where they missed a shot and you see his man come around him as he's just standing there staring at the ball at the rim, come around and get a putback on him. Now, that's kind of my one criticism of Malik. I think he kind of checks out at points during the game. But overall, obviously, been a great player for IU this season, and one that we, albeit interesting conversations are going to be had and everything. Hopefully he comes back and everything. Who knows? We'll just kind of react to that when we finally get that word. But your thoughts, Scott, I'll go to you first on Renew's game last night.
His game last night, it was good. I mean, he was good. He got off he was starting to get into a foul problem setup again. Like he finishes with 2 fouls. This is great. You know, starting from February 3rd, his fouls, he fouled out 4, out 4, 4, out 4, 3, and then 2 the other night. So he had kind of slowly, slid back into foul trouble, Malik, which is not good. But I'm pulling up his number. Last night he was the second wingman. It's going to be interesting to see. We kind of saw this next year. Hopefully he comes back. It's going to be interesting to see how he grows this for next year, because last year you obviously had Trace and Race, and Malik had kind of a nice, ability to be the third big in there. This year, immediately, Ware kind of exerts his dominance, although they're two different big men. They play a different role. In a way, Malik has really kind of been the primary big man. He gets doubled even more than Ware, the way they play him. But next year, if you don't have another Ware type in there, it's going to be really interesting to see how Malik handles kind of being really the primary big man. But no, last night he kind of gave you exactly what Malik's been giving you all game, which is really solid, really good effort. Would love to see the defense, the rebounding and the defensive rebounding numbers go up a little bit more, especially for as much as he's playing in the post. But 16 points on 6 of 13 shooting. It's good.
Yeah. Martha, your thoughts on Renew's game?
Yeah, I'll make mine quick. I think it's almost like when you think about Malik last season, guy that couldn't stay on the court, right? Would just get on the court and draw really quick fouls and end up playing 10, 12 minutes a game. And you look at how much he's been on the court this season. I mean, he played 38 minutes yesterday, and that's you see it somewhere in 35 points or 35 minutes or north, unless he gets in some foul trouble, which has happened here recently a little bit. But on average, I don't have that stat in front of me, but the amount of time he's been on the court from last season, it's been a tremendous improvement. But it also leads me to think that maybe he's, I don't say shutting down a bit, but almost like he's running on fumes, because I think we saw him peak about a month ago, and he's had some games where focus has kind of been off a little bit. He's getting those quick fouls. He's probably played more minutes this season than fresh out of high school last year. I think this has been a big year of growth for him, and I think we've seen a big step forward in his game. But I think when you look at the amount of minutes he's played this season, I think he could use a break. I think he's winding down a little bit, and does that excuse some of the boneheaded mental errors he's had? Maybe not. I mean, maybe he's just worn down, so it's decision making has been affected a little bit. But yeah, I think as we look at the last home game, just a really tremendous year of growth for Malik, and a guy that, Scott mentioned that if we can, I've loved having Khalil Ware here, but at times I wish it was, if we can slide Malik down to the 5 and maybe put Mackenzie Mbako if he comes back to the 4, and then surround him with a bunch of perimeter. That's my dream scenario, right? So I think it's a lot of people's dream scenario, but yeah, that's kind of my thought. And I think just he set himself up, and hopefully we can retain him to have, I think he looks like a 4-year player to me. So if we can find a way to keep him, I think he's the building block of the future.
Yeah. And we always got to remember, he is just a sophomore. Like you said, he's just a sophomore and has had quite a sophomore year and hasn't had to be the monster that he may have to be next year for IU when we've had that big monster underneath that's been helping him in Ware. And he, again, Ware just has another fantastic game. And what a growth, what a great move for him to go from Oregon, come to IU and prove all the critics wrong. When we think about what the rumors were going into this season about Ware was that he lacked that motor and the physicality and everything. And we saw that at the beginning of the season. There were times and there were games even towards the end of the season where he struggled against more physical big men and stuff. But he's just been a monster at the last half of this season to go 28 points last night. Standard efficient self that he is on 13 for 19. A shame he couldn't be just a one miss shot game like he's had a couple times. Did only make one free throw of 6. It was at least a very important one free throw that he had. 12 rebounds, and just, again, really in this game showed his versatility. Not being a big like we've seen from Trace that was only under the basket doing things, but hitting those mid-range shots, elevating on those fadeaways that we would love to have seen in Trace's game when he was at IU. Just great. Such a monster to have for IU. Your thoughts on Martha? I'll go to you first on Ware's game.
Yeah, and I'll make it quick so we can bounce around. But just, I mean, yeah, and he set himself up. I think, I don't know where he's going to go in the NBA draft, but when you the storylines, right, coming in of can't stay on the court at Oregon, right? He's lazy. All the adjectives that he came in with, and I think you've got to give credit to obviously not only him but the coaching staff too for putting him in a position to be successful. So I'm just, I think he's got that body type that I think could excel in the NBA if he continues to progress like we've seen him this season. But 37 minutes, he's the reason we won yesterday. Obviously, Michigan State had no answer for him, and that's been the case a lot this season. And I'm proud of the kid from kid that went out to Oregon, took a risk going way out there, far from home, and then coming back to Indiana. He had every reason to kind of not succeed, and he found a way to kind of right the ship, put it back together, put himself in a space where he could, be a good, productive basketball player. And I think the sky's the limit for this guy. I think he's everything an NBA team wants, and as far as development and things like that. So yeah, it's been a fun ride, and hopefully we can get a couple more games out of him.
Yep. Your thoughts, Scott, on Ware?
I mean, it just always makes me wonder, like, what the hell is going on at Oregon? Like, just fire that entire staff. Like, I'm not sure how they can do that. It's no, he's the real deal. I mean, you can see it in the first couple of games. Like, oh man, this guy's legit. Again, like, we just didn't know what you're getting. You hear about it. It's like, oh, everything sounds great in the portal. Everything sounds awesome. He plays smooth, like, and so I think sometimes just kind of being smooth and having things come easy may seem like he's playing not hard, but I mean, the dude plays hard. It's just everyone's version of hard is it's not always the same. And so it may not look like it, but he plays hard, and he's been awesome. I mean, unfortunately is going to be kind of that lineage of, a couple guys like a Noah Vonleh or somewhere. He's going to play here for a year. We're not going to make the tournament. And he's going to go on and play in the NBA. So he'll kind of be kind of a here and gone guy. And I'm not sure how well he'll be remembered, just because it's, unfortunately there's not a lot of team success, but as a player, he was awesome. And he always there was never any drama, never any like Khalil's pissed or like, it just, he came out and you could count on him for a double-double every single night. I honestly think a lot of his block numbers were suppressed because so many guys would drive in and immediately like look up and just turn around and pass out. Like he probably could have had 4 or 5 more blocks per game, but he was kind of non getting blocks because guys were like, yeah, I'm not going up against him. No, the dude's awesome. And, this does, whether, IU fans are annoyed at this or not, it's the case. Like Mike Woodson now has a great story to tell between, a little bit of Race Thompson, but a lot of Trace Jackson Davis, Khalil Ware, Malik Renew. It's like, look, if you're a great post player, you have post tendencies. I can come and turn you into, he gets post guys into the NBA. He is showing that here. The question is, can we get someone to shoot a 3? Would be really nice. But, there is that it's like, dude, you took a guy who, again, I just look at Oregon. Like, I don't know how you couldn't get this guy on the court and get at least 5 or 10 points out of him. But no, he's been awesome. And, I always joke at this point, it's like anybody's like, maybe Ware will come back. It's like, no, Ware will not come back. Ware should not come back. If he comes back, he's getting horrible advice, and those people should be fired. He should go to the NBA. Like he's projected low lottery to somewhere in the, mid-20s, which is a first-round pick. That's guaranteed contract money. And as Martha said, as an NBA fan, he is built for the NBA. Like everything about him looks NBA ready. Like he should go immediately to the NBA, and we should be happy to have him go.
Yeah, the scary narrative that's beginning to develop. Indiana's 2 marquee programs in college basketball are shifting Indiana to be the destination if you're a big man. Isn't that a weird narrative that is beginning for college basketball in Indiana? Final player that I want to speak on individually, then we'll get into some stats. McKenzie, just another step forward. Again, if you look at McKenzie at the beginning of the season, you look at McKenzie now, just what a great addition. And it's a big, interesting offseason for that kid, and a big offseason for the coaching staff to sit down and get him, convince him to come back one more year and what another step forward can be for him. And that's obviously where my eyes are going to go first in this offseason when it comes to what is the roster going to be for next year, because you've got the 2 pieces in the seniority and the leadership. Now you need those points and everything situation to convince to stay. And he's one, and obviously Renew's the other one, but just a game that I liked from him and another step forward. Obviously not monster numbers from him, but more of it each game now. I look at his defense and how his defense has gotten a lot better. He's still struggling a little bit because, again, I think, and many of the fan base would agree, that he's playing a little bit out of position. We'd love to see him more in the 4. But he's doing good against those 3 wing players, and on the defensive end is what I'm meaning. But I would love to see down the road in a lot more games him get involved early and being continued to be involved in the offense. I think he kind of trails away from us running plays for him in some of these games. Scott, I'll go to you first. Your thoughts on McKenzie in this game, and then just kind of your broader steps forward with him.
No, I'm with you on the growth. I mean, it's a guy who looks in the last, I'd say, month like the 5-star recruit that you were going to be getting. I mean, his 3-point stroke is pure. He's fully figured it out on defense. Like this is one where I just hope we can continue that growth. I hope that he stays here for another year. He's, again, one of the reasons why you like to watch college basketball is the player today is not the player that we saw in November. It's funny. That's what I was saying about this team all throughout the year is like, I think we're going to be really good. And I think the team you see at the end of, February and March is not going to be the team that you see in, November, December. Unfortunately, that ended up being kind of true. It just came at the very, very tail end, and it happened. There's none of it in February where you saw it, but you saw it all with Mbako. Something we've joked about on Crimson Cast is, Mbako's 3-point shooting is really good if you just took out some of his really bad games, right? Which I know is like weird stat keeping, but so he had 4 games early on where he was 0 for 5, 0 for 5, 1 for 7, and 1 for 5. Now, those happened. Those are real games. Those all happened in November and December. You take so right now he's shooting for the season 34%. You take just those 4 games out. He's now shooting. I had it up and then it went away on my screen. Hold on. 47 divided by 120. Math is fun. He's shooting 39% for the season. So you take out 4 bad games early in his career, he goes from a 34% shooter to a 39% shooter. He's damn near 40%. Now, again, that's playing with the numbers, and you could take out good games, but it's like the point is he had a couple of really early bad games or he was off. And anybody who watched this team, the guy we saw in November, December just was not the same that we saw in, February and March. So he definitely figured some stuff out. I think if he comes back and continues to figure it out and continues to kind of understand his ability to play with a little bit of, slow it down, let the game come to him, but then also aggressiveness, he could be really dangerous. I mean, he is a guy who, even just this last end of the stretch of the year, I haven't looked at any mock drafts lately. He's probably played himself into like a second round pick, just a flyer in the NBA. And maybe that's the best move, is just to go back as an IU fan. I'm a little bit selfish here, and I'd love to see him come back, get a little seasoning. But if he continues this same growth trajectory, there's no reason why that isn't a first round pick next year. Because, I'd see him shoring up those 3-point shooting numbers. If he's shooting, 38, 39% and giving you what he's giving on defense. And, honestly, a lot of games where offensive rating is hovering around 100. If he can get that to 110, 120 a game, you're looking at something different. So this, again, was a classic, freshman growth story, which is kind of the normal. Most 5-stars don't come in and just are completely NBA ready. Like most even elite players come in and kind of have this growth curve on their first year.
Well, and I think this is a great example of NIL and how NIL can benefit IU in this situation, because I think players like him are set up perfectly. Like you said, he could go if he wanted to. And I think in a non-NIL situation, I think he does go. But I think the ability to grow his stock while coming back and still earning that NIL money would lean a player like him in general more towards coming back in the season. Martha, your thoughts on Mackenzie?
I'm going to apply Scott's take 4 games out to my golf game, and when I golf,
for your handicap,
take my 4 double bogeys out. It was actually a good day at the course. But no, his point is well taken.
I do that anyway. I do that no matter what. That's a great way to play golf. Yeah,
exactly.
You're not getting paid for it, so it's go have fun.
Whoops.
Yeah, but the point is certainly well taken, and when you think about early in the season, and obviously the expectations that the guy came in with, I remember celebrating when we were able to get that commitment from Kansas, and just, the expectation that the guy came in with, and certainly he had a rough adjustment to whether it was the college atmosphere, the college game, all that stuff, right? Specifically defensively, offensively, he was a little bit lost as well. And then, slowly started to put the offensive game together, and the defense has taken steps. There are still times when I'm like, what are you doing out there? Where are you looking? Where's the awareness, right? There are those moments, and some of that could be, playing out of position. But I think there's been progress there, right? You clearly know you can clearly see that he's become a lot more comfortable offensively, and he's really good offensively. And yesterday kind of felt like what should be the floor for a guy like Mackenzie, right? 5 for 13 from the field, 3 for 9 from 3 on the court for 36 minutes and put up 13 points. That should be kind of an average stat line for the guy. And I think it kind of has developed into one. And I think you both hit the nail on the head. That is, if he's a guy, we talked a little bit about Malik in this, in this same way, right? If he's a guy that you can get a commitment to for next year, whether it be through NIL or whatnot, and then you've got the 2 other veterans returning. Now all of a sudden you've got something, right? You're not being asked to go out and get a whole new team through the portal, which I think is really not sustainable at all. But you're bringing back kind of 4 building blocks that you can go out and now build a team around, and Mackenzie just being the offensive weapon that he is, and maybe you slide him down to the 4. I think all of a sudden you've got something, right? But yeah, I think when you look, again, credit to the staff with where he started the season to where he is now, I think it's where a lot of people expected him to start the season. So it's nice to see. Yeah.
Looking at a few of the stats in this game, obviously I'll brush through a few and then I'll break it to you guys, see if there's any others you want to speak on. Obviously good ones, 40 to 22 points in the paint. That was kind of obvious. Michigan State doesn't really play a lot of their game in the paint. Rough one, 16 turnovers that reared its ugly head. Interesting kind of stat you'll see. We had no turnovers in the first 8 minutes of the game. And then Trey Galloway goes out, and not 20 seconds later, the first turnover of the game happens. 9 fast break points to 7 Michigan State's, which is kind of a huge one, I would say, because Michigan State is kind of known as the team that wants to get out on the break as well. Foul-wise, very interesting stat to see. Only 2 IU players shooting free throws for IU. That's Malik and Ware at 6 apiece. And a good one for IU is 6 for 17 from three. Obviously, not a huge stat for other teams, but a big one for IU on the amount of takes and the makes. Martha, kick it to you. Any stats standing out in this game for you?
Yeah, I think when I mentioned that, Trey being, only playing 7 minutes and being, our fourth leading scorer. I think when you look past, I'm looking at the box score now, you get past him, and then you've got Cup, Xavier Johnson, Anthony Leal, Anthony Walker that all played and combined for 3 points. That's tough, right? I mean, and then you think about, man, we still won. So you think about the guys that carried us, but it's just as we move forward, and in the last, obviously we've got, I think, some sophomores that didn't take that step forward that we thought would, and then, really the lack of any sort of perimeter depth. And, Gabe Cups was asked to do a lot. We've talked a lot about these things throughout the season, but just how do we build some better depth moving forward? Because it's, again, we talked about sustainability, and I don't think we can move forward with getting the type of production out of our bench that we've gotten this season. It's really been kind of non-existent in many games. And while I think Anthony Leal came in and played some really solid defense, you've got to find somebody that can come in and be that spark off the bench. And whether that's putting Trey back in that role or, finding it through the portal, we've got to be able to find some depth in terms of scoring, in terms of perimeter guys. And that 0 points out of, really you got 3 bench points, and that's it, Xavier Johnson. And, yeah, that's tough. You've got to find a way to build a little bit more depth in that. So that one sticks out to me a bit. But yeah, and I'm going to jump off because I've got to get my kid to school. But it's always been a pleasure. We'll see you. What do we play Thursday?
Yep. Thursday, 9 p.m. Penn State or Michigan? Yes.
And Scott, always good catching up with you. Let's chat before football season. It's going to be a fun one.
Oh yeah, Martha, let's go. Coach Sig, I'm ready.
That's right. See you, fellas. Thanks.
Thank you, Martha. Scott, moving to you, any stats other than what's been mentioned that stand out to you in this game?
Under a point per possession. So you hold Michigan State to 0.96 points per possession. That's 2 games in a row you've held your opponent under that. I think that's key in this win streak. The other 2, Wisconsin, you didn't. The thing that really stuck out to me is I'm going to go with I think it's up to like 80%, and that's what Michigan State's win probability was with 10 minutes to go in the game. They go on a 22-2 run to end the first half, to start the second half. They get up 55-48 there at the 10-minute mark. And you look at the win probability, it's just like it's an arrow going up for Michigan State. Michigan State is a name brand. So, unlike, Northwestern's a good team, Nebraska's a good team, but it's like you look at Michigan State, it's like you see Tom Izzo, it's like that is a brand. It's like that's a team. Whether they're good or not, it's like you get a little bit nervous about seeing that. And, it's been a funky couple of days for IU basketball. A lot of stuff going on that's not basketball related. All that said, would have been very easy for this team to just kind of pack it in at that point. You're down by 7. You're down by 7. And, things have been odd. And, it's Michigan State's got, but, they stop it. They go on a 12-2 run. They take the lead back. And at that point, they get into a battle and they end up winning the game. So to me, it's like that was maybe not a stat. I guess 12-2 would be the stat, but it's like that moment I think was key because we've seen Indiana teams in this season, be up in games and they give up a run and they get to that point and it's like it's just kind of like the wheels just continue to fall off the cart and you end up losing by 25 or so. It happened to us against, at Nebraska, at Maryland, at Penn State. So anyway, I was really happy to see that. So to me, it's like that's the moment and the stat of the game.
Yeah. IU getting punched and getting back up. Not something that happened a lot under Archie Miller. That was kind of the cornerstone of a lot of his as well, and a lot of the grief that we had for that one. Obviously, we talked about forward. IU is going to play the winner on Thursday in the 9 p.m. game. Could be a little bit later, just kind of domino effects as to what the timing is, the games before leading up to that. But between Penn State and Michigan, I greedily would like Penn State to avenge the game, but Michigan's obviously a slightly better matchup for IU and the fact that they've struggled in everything otherwise. But we'll see which one we draw in that. With Martha being gone for the moment right now, I'll do Martha's work in pitching the Hoosier Ticket Project. So obviously not very many games, not very many opportunities. We don't have any home games in that situation. But if you do find your situation that IU gets into the NIT or something like that, and you have those extra tickets to give off, instead of selling them, consider giving them to Hoosier Ticket Project to allow IU fans that don't have the means, the situations to get to these games, and continue that legacy that IU is, that energy that comes with being at a live event and watching IU play. Go to HoosierTicketProject.org to do those donations, or see where you can also nominate someone that you would like to see go to those games. So not only in these Big Ten tournament games, if you have those, but if IU plays beyond that, make that a consideration. Finishing things up here, Scott, thank you for being on. Give me your final thoughts on this game and maybe just the season overall.
No, I mean, this game was, it's funny, you look at the end of the season, I think we all just kind of thought they would lose out based on the opponents. Wisconsin's a good team. Michigan State is, by all metrics, a good team, although record, not quite. And we've had our issues with Michigan State. And, so to me, this was a good win. And it's also like, that was at the end, it was a battle. And you get down to like all the other stuff aside, whether they're making the tournament, all the other stuff is noise. You get in the end, it's like, it's a 2-point game. You have another team out there and you were able to close it out and you made the plays that needed to be made. So I think that's good. It reminds me kind of a little bit of our discussion with Xavier Johnson. Like, seeing these last 4 games just does kind of make you wonder, what could have been if we would have been able to figure some of this stuff out a little bit earlier, because it does feel a little bit like, man, it's a little bit too little, too late. Whether you like, I heard a lot of people yesterday, or some people I know were kind of like, this is insane that, Michigan State's in the tournament. We're not. We have the exact same record. It's like, well, I understand analytics, because not all records are created equal. And so you have to have analytics because it kind of takes a lot of the bias out of it. It is a bummer because, those of us who are deep into the analytics, whether it's right or wrong, on Crimson Cast, like, we were seeing this in December. It's like in December, It's like, man, this is not trending well. And there's just not a lot of opportunities for us to get the numbers back up. And we didn't get it done. Even a win at, if we beat that Kansas team at home, that would really swing things a lot differently. You probably are in the 60s in Ken Palm. I mean, I don't know how much it does swing, but you're definitely not in the 86 range. Even just last night, we went from like 99 to 86 with a home win against Michigan State. If you have a home win against Kansas, a non-conference game, maybe you're in the 70s or 60s, and now you're much more in the bubble conversation. And so it does suck. Again, it's a good win. Like, I'm trying to focus just on the game. It's just hard to not macro out, because it's like, it feels like it's just like too little too late. Like, you dug yourself such a hole. Now you have to go into the Big Ten tournament and you have to really make a run probably to the whole thing, which would be awesome. I mean, that would be, it's funny. I've talked so much this season about how, when fans really get unhappy, rightly or wrongly, you can't just you have to over deliver to kind of bring them back into the fold. And I think that was always the problem in my mind under Archie, is like, that second year was so bad. And then it's like, oh, you squeak in the tournament with a bubble. It's like, all right, that's like, you're doing just the bare minimum. Like, you can't have an absolutely horrific year and then bare minimum. Like, why isn't everybody back? So you've got to over deliver at some point. In a weird way, I feel like I find a way to talk about the Big Ten tournament every year. I was like, this is the year it could be. But like, of all years, if they won the Big Ten, that would be something where it's like, oh my gosh, like, that really over deliver. Like, that would do something that would, I think, really change the narrative on a lot of things. And so it's available. It's there. They're going to play the games, and there will be a final, and there will be a trophy, and like, somebody will get an automatic bid. It'll probably be somebody who doesn't need it, but go out there and get it. And it's the last thing I'll say is, it's funny, a couple friends have texted me like, hey, Indiana got a really good draw. And I'm like, I don't know, because the names are like, yeah, Penn State's not a normal name brand, and Nebraska doesn't normally put fear into you, but like, we haven't beaten those teams. Like, we've gotten smoked by Penn State twice. We've gotten smoked by Nebraska twice. Like, I know it doesn't say Michigan or Purdue or Illinois, but those teams have destroyed us. And so I'm not sure we did get a favorable draw. I'm just not sure this team has a favorable draw in it, given on how it's played against other teams. But, this is where you can change the narrative. For all the people who are like, fans need to be just like, at some point, the team also has to do something to change the narrative. And this would be a great way to change that narrative. If they go out and do kind of, win one, lose one in the Big Ten tournament, whatever, it'll kind of end with a whimper. And this season, unfortunately, this nice 4-game streak has been nice to see, but it'll kind of be like, man, remember that was like a mirage. Like that was a mirage and really a pretty bad season. And then it'll just turn into a pretty bad season that, when you look back on the Archie era, there were little moments where they won a couple games here and there, but we're not looking back and talking about the 2020 season. Like, I remember that stretch we beat, Iowa, Minnesota, Penn State in a 4-game stretch. It's like, we just like, all those seasons sucked. And so that's where being the end of the season now, it's like, it's a nice little positive blip, but it kind of almost gets added to like the entire season, which for the most part has been a disappointment.
Yeah. I think this is just going to be that season that we say if. It's just that if season, the injuries, if injuries didn't happen, if players develop sooner, if. And that's just where we are and what it is. And it's a bummer that we're at a fractured standpoint from a fan base as well. And like you said, winning can cure a lot and everything. And it's going to be quite the off season otherwise. So very interesting things to see from this Indiana team moving forward. We may have one more game. We may have 3 more games. We may have beyond that. So stand by, everybody.
Have you seen enough in the 4 games to think this is going to be a team that makes a run in the Big Ten tournament?
Have I seen enough, do I think?
Yeah. Like in these last 4 games, like, do you think this is going to be a team that can make a run to like the semifinals or the finals of the Big Ten tournament?
I think they can. If they continue this momentum that they have, depending on what's going on with Trey's knee, I think a lot is on that knee, and how he feels, because I think you have to have him. Either that, or you just have to have that Big Ten tournament X again to come out. But I think a lot weighs on that one situation on how IU moves forward. And he claimed in his senior speech that he is going to be back and that he's feeling better because, I mean, he's a fighter. That kid is a fighter, and be it good or bad, he is going to put it out there. And knowing that if he puts it out there and they lose, he's got the offseason to nurse himself. And yet again, Trey is experienced at injured off seasons and what he needs to do into that. So we will see from there. But that will do it, at least for this edition of Hoosier Morning After. Thank you for being with us. Thank you to Martha for being here. Thank you to Scott for being here with us as well. Follow me on Twitter at General Chadwick. There you can find out more information about the show, when we're going to go live and everything. Follow Martha at The Mop Lady. Follow Scott as well at CrimsonCast317. He's not the other Crimson Cast. He is the one that is blocked by X. Follow him there as well. Special thanks to Bob Thompson for producing the music you hear on the show. Thank you for being here live with us, guys. Those of you watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up, like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Those of you on Twitter, how you doing? Thank you for being with us. Those listening on the podcast streams as well, appreciate you and all. We'll be back again the morning after the next show. Until then, go out there, have yourself a wonderful day.
And as always, go Hoosiers.
All right, guys. So a little final thing I wanted to do, a little Hoosier Morning After dark situation for those of you off of the podcast. Obviously, was an interesting kind of thing. I didn't want to kind of taint the positivity that I always try to at least keep with to a degree in the regular show, but wanted to hear your thoughts. It was very interesting. Obviously, there's a lot of tension between the two fan bases and everything. And then we had the comments happen from Coach and from other people mentioning an interesting word, saying the word true fans. My initial gut reaction to that was I didn't like that. I didn't like how that kind of fractures the fan base. But something that did, at least on my standpoint, and those of you that listen and have heard me on this podcast know that I lean towards optimism. I lean towards good and everything. And it has taken a hit at the end of this season and all the situations and things that have happened. but it's taken a bump back up. I will listen to Anthony Leal in his situation where obviously he said in his senior speech, listen to those if you haven't, where he does back Woodson. He does say, you're not coaches. You don't know what it takes and everything like that. So I take some solace from that. Trey as well backs Woody in a very nearly emotional, near to tears standpoint. Needed to take a break to kind of talk about Woody and everything. Well, is that about that situation and the coaches and Woody? Is that just saying a senior speech? Who knows? But a very interesting standpoint where we are in this fan base. Scott, just wanted to get your kind of impression on those comments and kind of where things are in that realm.
Yeah, I mean, I for the players, I've always taken the stance that, I'm fine being hard and critical on the coaches because they're the adults for years. Like, they're the ones getting paid. But I still think that's the case. Even though the players are getting NIL and getting paid, which they should, I still am very comfortable being critical on the coaches because they're professionals. They know what, they know what they're being hired to do. And so, I understand from a player's point of view. You're recruited by a coach, you play for a coach, it becomes kind of a little tiny family and you become very defensive of that. And so I get that. I understand all the comments. I just don't, being totally frank, I just don't like the being told as a fan, like what I have to feel, what I don't have to feel. And like it's the fans' fault thing. Like that drives me bananas. Here's my thing. We were talking about on the pod about Xavier Johnson kind of trying to thread that needle and, ride the bull or, the rodeo kind of analogies, that thing. I was thinking about this the other day. There's something that, Zach Osterman talked about in one of his podcasts the last couple of days, but it's like, go for as much crap as I feel like IU fans let themselves be given and then people give to them, but how it's, it's so toxic and they're so crazy. And like, I don't know, a fan base, it's wild. It's like, all right, well, first off, we're continually told that we're like the number 1 or 2 largest fan base in the country. And like, we travel and we do this and that. And it's like, all right, go. And this is stealing straight off of what Osterman has said, but it's like, go give Kentucky 30 years without a Final Four, making the tournament like 40% of the time. Give them 30 effing years of that. And let's see how Kentucky fans are doing. Like, let's check in and see how awesome and sunny their fan base is doing. Go to North Carolina, go to Duke, like do all that. And everybody's like, oh, they have an off year. It's like, all right, an off year. Like we now are not going to make the tournament, 5 of the last 7 years. That's just that. I mean, and that's going off of, we had seasons where we went, 2-28. I know there was reasons for that, but it's like, we haven't made the tournament like over half the time since I graduated college. And that was in 2000. So like, we haven't had the high level of success. Like, go find any other passionate fan base and just kick them in the teeth this much. And like, you hear like, oh, it's like Auburn football. It's like, well, dude, Auburn football won a title. Like, and cell phones have been used. Like, this is insane. It's a super long amount of time. All that said is like, fans are still here. Fans are passionate. This is the IU job now. Like, you are kind of, the IU fans are that crazy buck horse you have to ride, and you've got to figure out how to do that. And I'm not sure a coach has. I'm not sure the best way to do it is to win. But if you're not going to win, you've got to find a way to wrangle this. And if you don't win, and if you aren't making tournaments after you had a really good portal year where you signed one of the best guys, you have a 5-star, and it's like, people don't like what they're seeing and they're not seeing wins. Yeah, people are going to get pissed and they're going to start bucking around. And like, you've got to figure out a way to rope that all back in, because the only other option, like my counter to this, is if coaches and players don't like the fan base being this engaged, like, that's great. The other option is we can just disengage. Like, we can stop the podcast. We can move down the list of Twitter follows. We can not go on the road trips. And like, that's the other option. You can just turn into DePaul, where it's like, you're just another program where fans half fill the arena half the time. It's like, you don't get it both ways. You don't get fans passionate, interested, and excited, and then they're always going to be positive. It just doesn't work that way. And if you believe that, you're living in it. So anyway, I don't know if I have an answer to that, but I can say categorically, as a fan who's been, I'm an alumnus, as somebody who's been a season ticket holder for 20 plus years and a varsity club donor, you know, I don't like being told that, you know, we just got to basically shut up and just fans got to just be positive and be happy. It's like, no, every year the checks come due and every year there is money to be paid. It's not a money thing, but like it is. And, you know, there needs to be some cost benefit reaction here. And it needs to be something that's fun and enjoyable. And at some point there needs to be some high level success, because we've been told as fans for 20 plus years that we are all about championships. Even Mike Woodson, in his own words, said he's here to come back to win Big Ten titles and win big championships. And we're about banners. Like, that is all we hear. And I get it from IU marketing. They have to sell on that. But it's like, at some point you have to deliver on that, or else people are going to get a little bit frustrated and pissed. And so I think that's what's going on here. Anyway, I've talked for a long time. I'm just going to stop and not like finish with a point, but those are my overarching thoughts about it. I don't particularly like it when the coaches are coming out and doing that, because it's like, it just doesn't play well. But to me, it's like, just say, hey, you know, it sucks being a coach because there's no right answer. It's like, we want Mea Copas, and then you give a Mea Copa and it's like, we'll just go out and do better. And it's like, but you know what, Mike, that's the job. Like, that is the job of being Indiana basketball coach, is you are leading this congregation and we are feisty and we are nuts. And in the end, it's a results driven business. And if you're losing, no matter what you say, people are going to find ways to get pissed at it. And you coming out and kind of getting squirrely and annoyed and getting pissed at the fans, that all I know is that is not the answer.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's, to me, I've come to the realization with Woodson, it's just, he hasn't earned the ability to do that yet.
Yeah.
He hasn't earned the ability to be like Knight. I mean, he's being like Knight in those instances. Like, I'm not going to talk about that, but you haven't done enough yet to earn the ability to tell us to shut up. But I think you nail it on the head by saying you don't get it both ways. You don't get us at our best if you can't take our attitude a little bit and the criticism. So, it's just going to make for a very interesting offseason. It's going to make for a lot of crazy discussions. It's going to make it fun, and to a degree as well, to be able to have these discussions and have these situations and these outs. And what we have to do, at least I will give this criticism of us and our fan base, is that we have to wait to not react to what is not decided, but react to what happens. We can't start reacting to, oh, well, Malik's gone. Well, we don't know that yet. Oh, well, he's not going to be able to find the guys in the portal. Well, we don't know that. Let's wait until we see what cards are dealt, what situations are. We've at least gotten some good cards dealt to a degree that are definitives in the fact that Leal and Trey Galloway are back. So at least we know those pieces. We know that situation. We can react to that. That's a good, that's a positive. That's things to build on now. And like we've said in this show, we are going to have to do a lot of portaling. That is correct. But this coaching staff has a lot of ammo now, at least on a portal situation. They can at least go out and sell good situations for IU in the portal. So yes, the true fan thing hurts. The fracturing of the fan base hurts. And now we will see. So I
will say this, you know, I think this is kind of a larger media point, but I do think that, you know, we need to work on our nomenclature with social media at times. And you see this a lot in the news where it's like, you know, I don't know, like, you know, like trash can pizza or rat pizza, or like just something will happen, like some random meme. It's like, oh man, you'll see on the news, like this is blowing up online. It's blowing up on social. It's like, if you ever dig into it, like 9 times out of 10, it's like, all right, it has like, I don't know, 15,000 likes or 20,000. It's like, what does blowing up mean? And like, what does that mean versus like 25 million people watch the Oscars? Like, and I'm not saying the Oscars are like blowing up the internet, but it's like, sometimes you'll hear this stuff. It's like, oh man, you know, this woman laid into someone on an airplane. Like, it's blowing up on Twitter, and like the backlash. It's like, well, is it? Or like, what defines that? Like 10,000, 12,000. So you hear these stories of like, oh man, you know, the fans are the reason McNeely left, or like, cause it got too toxic. It's like, based on what? Like, do we have examples of that? And on the flip side, it's like, if he goes to Kansas, like, is Kansas nothing but, you know, sunshines and rainbows online? Like, do they not have people doing that? Like, I think a lot of time this gets overblown by people who are, and albeit I'm not deep into social media, but I just look at it and I sometimes think people will say, oh man, it's getting super bad out there. And stuff's running wild. It's like with what? Like, because it doesn't seem like, I think sometimes it's a very easy talking point to be like, oh man, the fans are toxic and they're super mean. Like, it's just getting wild out there. It's like, I don't know how much of that is real, how much of that is just people in their own little circle echo chambers. And so there's not a point there, but it's just like, I do think some of this can get overblown. I think the idea that the fans have this much power in coaches or players' decisions to go or stay, I think is a little bit, I just think that's way overblown, because if you're going to want to play for a high major program like Indiana, if you're Liam McNeely or you're Anthony Leal or you're Trey Galloway, and like you sign on to play for a school like this, that going in, like, the fans are excited. And then if you decide to go and transfer to another like North Carolina, so you can't think like that's not going to be the same thing there. The only way to get out of this is to step down a level and do like the Christian Lander. And like, I'm going to go down to like a lower level school where the pressure is not so high. So I think that's also funny when people are like, oh, it's, like, oh, Liam McNeely left because of the pressure online. It's like, that's absurd. Unless he's just going to go play for like, Ohio or something. Like, he's gonna end up playing for another school that probably has the exact same type of fan base engagement. So I think it's kind of a crutch. It's a silly talking point. But in the end, you need some wins. And I think your point, I will end on this, is a 100% valid one. And I am so guilty of this, is like you can't prognosticate future negative things happening. Like, they haven't happened yet. And so like, maybe we are able to build the perfect roster this offseason, and you and I and other fans just can't see it. And it's not based on all 5 stars and all the best portal guys. Like, maybe the best path is out there. It is laid, and the best team is not the one that we see in the portal, but the one this team is going to build. And so I do think it's like, all right, this coaching staff's coming back. Got to give them the benefit of the doubt and hope they can somehow figure it out.
Yep. And we'll end on that, and we'll end on hope. Being that the Star Wars that I see in the back of my background and the Star Wars in the back of yours, A New Hope is the off season for IU. So thank you for joining us on this little bonus situation, everything, guys. We'll be back. Thank you. See y'all later.